Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
Now, live from Chicago, the Hal Sparks radio program Mega Worldwide.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
Hal Sparks, actor, comedian, and multimedia personality.
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Hal Sparks.
All right, let's do this.
Well, by golly, it's quite the week. Oh. Johnny Million is doing ASMR for all of us. Isn't that sweet?
I'm done. I promise I won't do that anymore.
I don't know that I believe you. I'm on the fence, personally.
I'm trying to lighten the mood. It's been a rough week, man.
It's been a very rough week. And if you think it was rough for you and I, imagine how rough it was for the current crop of maggots in this country. Yesterday, Steve Bannon declared Kari Lake the official undisputable governor of Arizona. So the right wing, for the record,
neato,
are handing out participation trophies. Yeah, you're mayor too. Nobody loses. You get a little ribbon for playing the game.
So she can be mayor, governor, like the way Trump is still president.
Yeah. So
when things are going horribly,
we can blame her.
It's because
it's her.
Yeah,
it's her
exactly.
Fault. Yeah. I'm always amazed that it would be really funny if Katie Hobbs, for example, knew that like somebody calling in was particularly like specifically a maggot, and they're like, I don't like the way you're running Arizona. Phone call, and she's like, I'm sorry, you have the wrong number. You need the actual governor. I'll put you through right now. Can you transfer her to? Because they still got her cell phone from.
By the way, they say I'm louder than you.
Oh, I was working on that. I was tweaking with that. I think it's. I think we'll be okay. My mic because of this crazy website I use goes down all the time. It's so strange.
That's
Anyways,
right.
Yeah, it's a weird, it's a crazy thing. It's crazy. So, anyways.
Thank you, Lisa Mia Moore. Thank you, Hal Vickery.
Thank you for the super chats, guys. And by the way, welcome to the show. It's Hal Sparks radio program Mega Worldwide. We're every Saturday, and we also live stream at infotainmentwars.com, and we live stream on Facebook, on my Facebook page, the Hal Sparks page, and on Twitch, twitch.tv/Hal Sparks, and we're on Twitter, whatever that is. I don't even know what that place is right now. It has a For You feed along with the stuff that I've chosen to be for me. Apparently,
I was like, why am I getting all these tweets? I have to switch over to following all the time.
Right, because they know better than you what you might want to see. You might also be interested in is now a thing. It's now the actual feed. And by the way, right before
you might also like Hitler.
Right. Yeah. It's a parody account, but he does say all the things. Elon Musk, right before he in the process of trying not to buy Twitter, right before he bought it, and after he said he was gonna and said he wasn't gonna before he did, he went on his account and said, by the way, click up in the corner and you'll see the feed that's what you want to see, not what they want you to see. And then as soon as he got in, he just threw the big, make that permanent. Yeah, it's pretty gnarly.
He did.
So lots to talk about today. Obviously, Philip Bittner will be joining us in the second hour. There's a lot of news coming out of Russia right now. I might have a scoop that he doesn't have. I'm at this point. I mean, because it's he's more of an on the ground kind of a guy, and I have to be big picture because I'm in Las Vegas. But there's some really fascinating economic news about Russia and its relation to the EU and all that kind of stuff that I would like to break down, and I think it'd be great to talk about it when he's on the show. In the meantime, though, yesterday was like a horrible holiday for disgusting, frightening video. Now, we live in a time...
I successfully avoided all of it.
I did not. I watched all of it, And yeah, it's I mean, considering, like I said, I am I don't even know how you call it, a subscribe to or a member of or a thing on a bunch of like Telegram channels that are both right wing and pro Russia and Ukrainian stuff.
Yeah.
I see my fair these days. In the last year, okay, here's a Gen X thing, Johnny Million, and I'm sure you and I had this conversation in high school. There was a videotape floating around years ago.
Yeah.
That, and I think you know where I'm going, that was banned, but some people had it or knew somebody who had a copy of it. I think one of the video stores in Wilmette, the dude who ran it had a copy you could borrow, and it was called Faces of Death.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I was about to guess that.
Yep. Faces of Death it was just like real, like horrible deaths of people caught on video.
Yeah, I remember watching that at Greg Soar's house.
Yeah,
Remember
that
Greg?
makes sense to me. Yeah. Greg, if you're listening,
I'm really sorry to name check you.
Yeah, it wasn't your fault. It was because somebody else. But the interest, the sort of prurient fascination with that when we were kids was the rarity of it. Now, and that was a thing. Like, it was literally like any video store that would sell something like that or have it on its shelves would be out of business in a second. It was always under the table or hidden around or, snuck around, or somebody pretended they had seen it. I knew people who I know had never seen it who pretended to have seen it. I know that.
I remember when I finally saw it. I have kind of like an echo of it. I remember just the pit in my stomach, just like, because I love slasher movies, I love horror movies.
Yeah,
but
there's a difference. There's a huge difference.
I couldn't.
Right, and
I remember going to the kitchen.
Yeah, I just remember the alligator. That's the only one. I
remember the monkey.
Yeah, a lot of it. Yeah. Anyways. It was sort of generally understood that even as latchkey as we were as young kids and as supposedly exposed to the world as we were as Gen Xers when we were growing up, there was an idea that like seeing stuff like that isn't necessarily good for you. It's not even good for you when you're an adult. It's traumatic and gross. And now that stuff pops up on social media all the time. Stuff of equivalent to that is shows up on the regular, and they'll go trigger warning and like like they used to close down video stores if they thought they would show anything like that. And I remember a couple of movies that I watched when I was a kid, mainly like Cannibal Holocaust, which was a Argento movie where he allegedly, it was banned in Italy and in other countries because he used real corpses to show.
Oh yeah, I heard about that.
Yep. And I remember seeing that and watching it and going, I don't know if that's true, but even the thought that it's true is wrecking me right now. This is really sad.
Fun fact. You know about the Poltergeist swimming pool scene, right?
Yes.
The when all of the skeletons are coming up around her, those are real cadaver skeletons because they're way cheaper than fake ones. They were real.
Well, nature makes them, whereas you gotta have a factory that makes fake bones.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's horrifying. There's also one real skull at Disneyland. Did you know that in the Pirates of the Caribbean and all the skeletons? There's one. It's on the master bed in the treasure room. It's in the headboard. That's a real skull.
What are we doing to ourselves?
I don't know, but here's what I'm saying. Like that, the point I'm trying to make is, there was a time, and I don't want to get to kids today because it's not kids, it's grown-ups who, I don't know if it's just this general like the prurient interest in it, and specifically like the Memphis police brutality video is heartbreaking and I don't recommend anyone watch it, because you're not going to understand anything better by having seen it. You're not going to, there's not going to be a realization that comes from it. If you see it, it's exactly what you've heard it is. It is the police that did it. The 5 officers are being charged with everything from second-degree murder to reckless endangerment and I believe even kidnapping. Yeah. Because he was not allowed to leave and they had no reason to detain him. That's that's what that is. By the way, same charge OJ got in Las Vegas, because
when he wanted his
stuff back, because he had his friend who had a gun, and he was basically threatening.
Don't let anyone leave.
You can't leave the room. That's kidnapping.
Yeah.
You don't have to take someone away to kidnap them. We often think of that. We think van, child, skid marks, goodbye.
Yeah.
But this kidnapping is technically, if you hold someone in your own house, that's a form of kidnapping, because they should be able to go wherever they want.
Wrongful imprisonment, baby.
That's right. So I would say, and in seeing it go around this, just kind of ginning up the outrage machine on Twitter without any result from it is I would argue socially dangerous, because the officers were charged. The video came out. It's the kind of the linear nature of a crime and any other crime. If these weren't police officers and there was film of someone who'd been attacked and it came out after they'd been charged, that's how this stuff usually works. Same thing, same thing with the Paul Pelosi video. And we're already at the break because we've been chit-chatting so much about horror,
gross things.
And
sorry about the tangents.
Sorry about that. Sorry about the tangents on this. But it is about how accessible that stuff is and how shocking it can be, and how that impacts your view of the world. And can't not. And that's something, it's almost like people have to be continuously vigilant against, so that they don't become jaded and nihilistic and think the world is constantly awful, when it frankly is not.
Right.
And one of the reasons why we want access to those things and be able to see those things so we know what's going on is because we care about the victim. And that's something I think also people need to focus on and never forget. We'll be back right after this. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, now with 100% more Johnny Million. After this,
That's me.
Oh boy, the Paul Pelosi mea culpas are coming in hot and heavy. They're dialing it back as best they can. They're trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube. We'll be back.
Yeah. I saw
You're locked into the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I'm just going to let Johnny bring us back. Go ahead, Johnny. Bring us back. Go ahead.
Hey, welcome back to the House Sparks Johnny Million thing. It's stuff we do on Saturdays, and we're talking in the break about how Fox News is awful.
That was really good. That's good. And that was off the cuff. People might not believe that. But that was completely extemporaneous.
Completely off script.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, Don Jr. couldn't pull that off. He could not.
I think I could
always
still
has to
do
look at his
better
notes.
than Don Jr.
I think so
every
too.
Time. Mouthful of chips.
Yeah. So the Paul Pelosi attack, there are elements of it that we have known for a very long time. Elements that if you paid any attention to it, namely parts of the 911 call that were released, it's abundantly clear that Paul Pelosi, while he was trapped in his house with this lunatic for something like 45 minutes before he was able to call.
Lasted that long?
Yeah, because the guy broke in and then came up to the room and he was like, I'm here for Nancy. And he's like, well, she's not here. So what are we going to do? And he's like, well, I think I'm going to have to tie you up because I'm tired from carrying my backpack up the hill. And he goes, well, how about I just go in the other room? And he's like, and he blocks him. And then they sit and the guy's just quiet for a minute. He's holding a hammer. Like, it's terrifying. This is the story of it. So he finally gets to the bathroom where his phone is charging, because even the Pelosi's live like the rest of us, which is we have our one phone adapter in the next room on the counter, just like my dad does. Like they instead of having like one of those nifty chargers beside the bed, they just where's the nearest outlet that I don't have to bend over for? That's how old people charge
that
their
why
phone.
I do it like that? That's got to be why I do it like that.
That's exactly why you do it like that. It's why you.
I hate bending over.
Well,
the things you say when I bend over, it's a big
that's what it is. It's scars from high school. Anyways, so he manages to get into the bathroom. He makes a phone call to 911. It's on speakerphone, and you can hear him saying, "There's a man in my house, and he's standing right here, and he's talking. He's here. I'm Paul Pelosi. My wife is Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and he's here for her. We don't know him. He's telling me to put the phone down and do as he says." And the 911 operator's like, "Okay, well, let us know if you have a real problem. Call us back." And he's like, "No.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I didn't hear this.
Yeah. The transcript of it and the recording of it, I posted it on my Twitter, is astounding. Just experientially. And ultimately, I think the biggest lesson in all this is hats off to Paul Pelosi, because oh my God, that guy kept his cool. That guy, because looking back, I mentioned this yesterday on the live stream. If people want to watch that clip, I do a full breakdown of it. It took like an hour. I broke down Glenn Beck basically never apologizing, but walking back everything he said for the last 6 months or whatever, or the last 3 months about this thing. And in going through it, the one thing that kind of stands out is that, again, 45 minutes till he gets the 911 call, 10 minutes until they get there. And the whole time, in retrospect, we're looking back on this, and we know he was hit in the head with a hammer by this crazy person.
Yeah.
But up to that point, Paul Pelosi had managed this lunatic in his house. He had for all Paul Pelosi knew was, he's got a hammer, but the cops are here now, and they see this as something wrong. They gotten my clues. I don't have, if I scream or something, he might snap. So far he's calm. He's trying, until he starts to try and wiggle away the hammer in it. Like it is incredibly impressive how Paul Pelosi was able to survive that up until he was struck all by himself. Because it's a nightmare scenario. And looking back in retrospect, because hindsight is 20/20, we all now know that David DePape is capable of physically assaulting an elderly man and trying to kill him. But up to that point, it's just a cuckoo bird guy who's ranting about your wife in your house, and he hasn't done anything yet, and you've managed to calm him down, and the cops are on their way. And if he thinks, the cops are coming up, or if they roll up, with their lights flaring and sirens or whatever, he might react on that even. So, again, amazing that Paul Pelosi, that the police didn't show up, knock on the door, and not get an answer because DePape was in there standing over a corpse. That could have happened at any time.
So easy.
And yet, Paul Pelosi was able to calmly, and you can hear him trying to tell the 911 operator without telling the 911 operator.
Yeah.
That he's like, I don't know this man. And DePape even at one point goes, what's the man's name? And he goes, I don't know. And the guy goes, my name's David. And he goes, do you know this man? And he goes, who is he? And DePape leans in and goes, I'm a friend. And literally Paul Pelosi says he's a friend, but we don't know him. Oh. And at one point when the 911 operator is hanging up, she goes, well, call us back if you have a problem. He goes, no. He thinks everything's okay. I have a problem, but he thinks everything is okay. He's telling me to put the phone down and do what he says. And at that point, it's just like, sirens all over the place. It has to be. And not to mention the fact that it's Nancy Pelosi's house is going to come up. Although, for who knows, it might just say Paul Pelosi, because they're old-fashioned and his is on it's his phone, and the location of the house might be she's not there. He even says at the beginning, like, are the Capitol Police there? And they're like, no, this is San Francisco. He's like, no, I understand that. They usually handle things for my wife, Nancy Pelosi. She's the Speaker of the House. Clearly trying to tell the 911 operator that this is a serious, dangerous situation. Never mind the fact that there was this whole conversation. We went over this, I think you and I, a couple of times. This whole, like, he came to the door and he opened it and they said, there's no problem here. And they were both in their underwear. And then they took several steps back into the room and did the Mamba or whatever the heck. When you watch this video, it is nowhere near the reality of what went down. And everything about it, it's clear that a man in a hostage situation is doing his best, by the way, to try and rotate David DePape around. Quite frankly, so if he tries to do anything, the cops can shoot him without having to shoot through Paul Pelosi. It's like...
just terrifying.
Yeah. And Stargal saying, why on earth would he call 911? Because they have a landline in the house that apparently connects to DC or whatever that's set up. And that if you pick up that phone, apparently they know there's trouble and blah, blah, blah. But he wasn't near that. That's not in the bedroom. It's in the living room or something because it's one of those kind of things. It's more for communication, not emergencies. I don't think they were thinking it through that way. But there was no landline in the bedroom that he could get to anyways. Insofar as we know, he had to use his cell phone. And he had one phone call to make. And 911, that's who's close. That's how you do it. And that's, by the way, why it worked. So just watching everybody, walk it back. And at one point, like, Paul Pelosi has a bottle of water in his hand.
Yeah.
And in his left hand, while he's holding the other hammer, while he's holding the hammer that DePape has by the top to try and make sure that he can't get it loose. And it's really clear that Pelosi has been trying to normalize this guy until the police arrive. Like, he's like, maybe can I get a drink of water? You're like, because think of all the things you would do. If I get a drink of water, can I get a glass? If I have a glass and he attacks me, can I hit him with the glass? If I get to the kitchen, I know there's a way out through there that he might not know. Is there, you know what I mean? There's a myriad of things that you start going through in these situations. And it's clear that Paul Pelosi tried all of them. He tried to get into 2 different rooms before he was able to go to the bathroom to make the phone call and was stopped. And so all the people who, the Republicans, especially in the House, who trivialized and mocked this attack. And by the way, just so they could get anti-gay digs in. Let's be abundantly clear. Some of them...
100%.
Yeah, some of them were just like, oh, awesome, it happened in San Francisco. I can just bash gay people in the process. What a win-win. Those folks in particular need to be hounded like George Santos. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the House Sparks, or whatever his name is. It's the House Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. Anthony DeVolder, George DeVolder, Anthony Santos.
Welcome back to the House Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
By the way, apparently, right after the footage was released, David DePape called into KTVU, where he's facing charges. He's in jail. Called there and said he boasted about his actions during the attack. Said that he wished he would have been more prepared. And he said, now that you've all seen the body cam footage, I have an important message for everyone in America. You're welcome.
Okay.
So, to all to Ted Cruz and Scott Perry and MTG and Glenn Beck and Tucker Carlson and all these folks, this guy is now yours. He was a dyed-in-the-wool maggot full-on Trump supporter, and I have no problem calling him that because he's in the violent category. And you guys own him. And now he is not only a nutty supporter of Donald Trump that attacked an old man with a hammer, he's now boasting about it. He now thinks it's, I suppose, being unrepentant puts him in league with like the unrepentant Jan 6ers, for example. Yeah. That he considers himself like a satellite soldier of the Jan 6 attack. And in many ways, that's exactly what he was. He was just late because it took him a long time to get that pack up the hill. And by the way, more prepared, the guy had a giant backpack full of God knows what.
Yeah, what else was in that backpack?
I don't know. It had to be multiple changes of clothes and a parachute. He was going to DB Cooper himself out of there or something. But just, you know, and interesting that he calls in right after the phone call or right after the footage comes out. He said, let's see if there's more of his statement because I can't play the audio anywhere. DePape goes on to say that he sought out to pay a little visit to the people he believes to be responsible for killing freedom and liberty, and is only regretful he didn't get more of them. I have a lot more to say. I had a website of over 300 pages. That's 300 pages of stuff they don't want you to hear. I'm in the process of trying to set up a new site out of the reach of tyrannical global fascists. I mean, I don't know why Marge Green hasn't hired him already. He sounds like a spokesperson.
You think he's one of those that would ask you to define what a fascist is so he could convince himself that he's not one?
Yes. Yeah, right.
I want you to define for me what a fascist is.
And then he just, that moment where you ask them to define fascist and then they go, oh my God, and start punching themselves in the face. That never happens. The website, by the way, where he quotes and shows that he's a fan of Jimmy Dore, among others, was broomed off of a lot of sites. But I guarantee he's got he's going to put the exact same clips up and say the same stuff. So everybody who was like, I'm not responsible for that guy. I didn't say anything that he could construe as being permission or support for that kind of action. He's going to go online and he's going to double down.
Yep.
Somebody's saying, how does he have access to these things? Because he has not been found guilty yet, and he's in the charged state of it, he does have limited access to things. Now, he'll have computer access because he's a violent criminal and it's on film. He'll have access, to what is effectively the prison web, which won't allow you certain places, but it's stuff that you can interact with your lawyers. The lawyers could set up an access point or plead for it, which is probably what he's talking about. Plead for him to have access to, his Wick account or domain.com or whatever he's using, right, to try and set up a site. Yeah. They could argue that it's his free speech to do so. But at the same time, if they have any brains whatsoever, they might say, yes, we'll make that argument, and then come back to him and say, sorry, didn't work out. We tried because the video of you hitting the guy with the hammer, they were like, nah.
Not a good look.
And your free speech, you can say anything you want. You just can't type it on the internet and make money off of it. And that's the concern because all these sites sell advertising. So they're concerned. And by the way, never have to go through it because, quite frankly, his lawyers should know at this point that this phone call alone is going to add a decade to his sentence. Because what he's up against is, you're talking about a sentence of 20 to 30 years. That's the extra 10. That's right there. That calling into the radio station saying, I'm sorry I didn't get more people. Because here's why you get thrown in jail, folks. It's not because you did the bad thing. It's because you're inclined to do the bad thing, and you might do the bad thing again, and the rest of us have to get on with our lives.
Yep.
So it is, and the more able you are to do that bad thing that you have the urge to do, the longer they have to keep you in until, quite frankly, very possibly, you're too old to do it. And it's why, by the way, statistically speaking, women get 10 years less than men for the same charge. Same murder victim, same dead person, same
So
blood
weird.
splatter and all that has. But you know why? Because men have 10 more years of being stabby than women do in terms of when they get out of jail. Men can muster up the strength to be stabby about a decade longer than women can physically over time. If you put somebody in for 30 years, you got to put a dude in for 40 years because he's got 10 years of being stabby. If you don't believe me, look how long it took him to catch the Golden State Killer and how he was like, I can barely move. And in reality, he was like kicking it up a notch. It's not entirely, it is punitive. Central scrutinizer saying it is punitive. It certainly is. But the resulting, that's why we call it arresting someone. It's why it's, we stop that person, because the idea is that anybody who crimes like that will have a tendency to crime like that some more. And again, it's why for any sane person, hate crimes laws make sense. Because again, if you have a one-to-one problem with someone and you manage to you happen to kill them in an exchange or something like that, you should be arrested and tried and convicted and punished for that to some degree. But if you did it just because of the color of their skin or their religion or who they are, the chances of you, when you get out, doing it because there's a lot of those folks around is way higher. So hence, we need to pad out your time because it was more a generalized threat than a singular threat, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Anyways, DePape, in many ways, even though he was there to attack Nancy Pelosi and ended up attacking her husband, was generalizing about Democrats in general, but actively after the attack, up to that point, he hadn't attacked anybody, and therefore, crazy person with delusions. He might have, in San Francisco, he might have gotten bail that night. But after the attack and then calling in and saying, you know what, I'd do it again. That's exactly why the Jan 6ers that are in the DC jail are in there. Plenty of them walked home. Plenty of them got an ankle monitor. Plenty of them were released on their own recognizance. The only ones that are still there are, yeah, I did it and I'll do it again.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's as unrepentant about this, and it's not like he has a life outside of jail right now, honest to God. So it's not surprising that this becomes an act of ego, because think about it. Breaking into someone's home at all, just to burglarize it, is an enormous act of ego.
Yep.
It is a level of self-involvement that I think most people can't even wrap their heads around. I deserve to be in your house. That's a crazy thought. That's for most people. Going there to actually kidnap, in this case, or harm someone is even worse. Is an even bigger act of, I'm more important than your life. This is worse than I'm more important than your security or your stuff or your right to own things or your right to live in peace or whatever. Because that's all that you bust somebody's window and crawl through it. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
And if you do, on top of that, it's like, I'm not even worried about your stuff. I'm here to take you out. The amount of ego involved in something like that, especially in this guy's case, or in the case of somebody who does it for political purposes or allegedly political purposes, or, somebody like that, it's no wonder that he was attached to someone like Trump. Because Trump is, he's the, the patron saint of narcissism for these folks.
Yep.
So, that tape coming out, and I think the world seeing it and going, and again, he knows what happened. He knows what he looks like. He's seen the tape. His attorneys have seen the tape. They probably released it to them at the same time. And that's one of the reasons why it got out. And It's not a good look.
Oh, no.
Not at all. He's not, he doesn't come across as a master ninja hitman. And honest to God, again, this phone call seems like an act of ego in that regard. I'm embarrassed by how pitiful I look and how pitiful this went and how pitiful I'm seen. And I think the essence of this whole thing is that the very people that I was there to represent have turned on me and said, "No, I'm not a MAGA supporter. I'm not, anti, Democrat warrior for freedom and liberty. I'm Paul Pelosi's gay lover." That's their pain. My own people.
That's how far they'll go.
Right. His own people, the people he was willing to allegedly sacrifice himself for, have talked about him, quite frankly, in a way that in their world is one of the highest pejoratives out there. The fact that he's gay, or that he would be gay in this situation. Insofar as we know he isn't, but that's not important to the circumstance at all.
Doesn't matter.
It's the label that the Republicans decided, okay, what's the worst thing we can say about him? Is that he's Paul Pelosi's lover and it was a spat and this is all true. And that, by the way, that we get an anti-gay San Francisco slam. We get to assume marital infidelity, corruption, and perversion amongst Nancy Pelosi and her husband. We can hint at that. And we get to stiff arm this dude who's on our side, who, either in some people's beliefs, crossed the line and did something he shouldn't do by being violent about it, or failed, and therefore as a failure, they got a stiff arm.
Failed.
Right?
Yeah.
That to them, there was and again, a lot of times what you're seeing on the internet, I would like to say to you, and this goes back to our kind of discussion earlier about videos that you'll see on the internet in general. Imagine, if you will, if someone, a neighbor, a stranger, could paint a different view of the world on all of your windows anytime they wanted to. And all they had to do was get you to open the drapes. And if you looked out them, you would think that's what the world looks like, whether it does or not. And I plead with everyone hearing the sound of my voice to never take that for granted. Never take that what you're seeing is representative of the world at large. Because again, in the case of the two people that were in that house, you had one crazy dude who's obviously an unrepentant, egomaniacal, violent, maggot sociopath. And then you had Paul Pelosi, who, in general, probably in that house there's a weapon somewhere, managed to talk this dude through this whole thing to the point where he called the police and and you're crazy and everything's gonna be okay, and tried to nurse this guy back to reality the entire time until the police could take him away and he could either be arrested or get the help he needs. And then the police that showed up there, while they didn't react immediately until the 1/8 of a second, where the hammer comes loose and he starts swinging at him, which it only took one blow and it happened like that. And the police acted immediately on that circumstance, not knowing the circumstance when they opened the door or when the door was opened. The police in this circumstance did their best, like any of us would show up at a door and go, okay, what's happening here? What's my reaction ability in this circumstance? Who's who made the phone call? In that time, that's all it took.
Yeah.
While you're assessing. And that's how life is. Life is a big mess sometimes. And don't let the fact that life is a big mess sometimes corral you into, an outrage barn that you're in all the time, so that they can either let you out when they need you or set fire to it when they don't. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Hi, chat room. Love you.
Love you, chat room.
Attention. Stop what you're doing. Because we're coming back to the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Oh my God!
They went a little crazy with it, and I appreciate it.
Now let's get back with Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I would like to say, for the record, to everybody who's debating about in particular to the Paul Pelosi video, because I think obviously the Memphis video, it's pretty clear. We have it's pretty clear. You have 5 police officers acting in a horribly violent way, pretty cut and dry. Nobody's rewatching frame by frame seconds of that and going, well, maybe.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm sure there's some discussion being had or to be had about the fact that Tyree was running to his mother's house to escape the police because he thought they were going to kill him because of the narrative that cops kill black people all the time, even though these cops were black, and that contributes to that. And and we all know that Freddie Gray a judge had ruled that him running away from the police was a reasonable response. The problem is that when that becomes a normalized thought form, then genuine criminals, genuine violent offenders, of which, by the way, this man was not, will use that as an excuse to fight back or get away or or claim that. And that's always been the concern. It's been a back and forth. There'll be a conversation about that. I have no doubt whatsoever. And that storyline, when not mitigated with some element of reality, in most people's interaction. Again, there are over 1 billion police interactions every year in the United States, from traffic stops to full-on SWAT teams. 1 billion interactions. 1 billion. There's 17,000 police departments in the country. There's over 680,000 police officers. All day, every day, pulling over, DUIs and people with stolen vehicles and domestic disputes all the time. Matter of fact, most of the time, if a cop is going to be killed in the line of duty, it's going to happen during a domestic dispute. In someone's home, by the way, while some element of violence is happening. That's the most common way. So, as we're all, and home invasions being what they are as a side note, and whether or not the 9/11 operator told them as much as they gathered from this is we don't know right now because that's over radio and I don't know that it's recorded and blah blah blah. But there is no frame by frame breakdown in the Memphis video that will teach you anything except that's awful and never should have happened and it's bad.
Yeah.
And we agree. On the Pelosi thing, there are still right wingers trying to frame by frame break down that video and go, well, they should have just left right then. So like there is, again, all these circumstances happen all the time. Like in life, it doesn't matter what country you're in. I remember for a long time, there was a belief system that only the United States had serial killers. Remember, like that was, think about it. Most people, early 90s, late 80s, it was even a conversation point amongst the USSR and China specifically. America is the only country with serial killers. America and then of course the UK because Jack the Ripper and the Ken and Barbie and the Moore people or whatever. There's like some dude who was notorious there. But America's the big one, right? America has all of them because we're violent and crazy and blah blah. Now we find out that, quite frankly, in Russia, they don't even do anything about it for a very long time. Same thing in China. And they have, China has an issue for the last 15 years that I've been aware of. I don't know if they had it before then. But they have, impulse mass killers. They snap and go after a bunch of people. And it's horrifying. It's the stories about it are particularly horrible. But it wasn't even part of our thinking. And this is something that I think it's necessary for everybody to recognize. That the human interactions, when something genuinely awful is happening, and there is no, you can train people to respond to it as EMTs and police and soldiers and other people are trained, trauma surgeons and the like. They're trained to do this. But every circumstance has so much wiggle room in it. My mom's a nurse. My uncle's ex-FBI. My cousin's a U.S. Marshal. You know, he's like the stuff they've been through. As much as it might prepare you in some way for won't let that happen again, can't possibly, because there's so many moving parts, so many variables in so many situations that Monday morning quarterbacking a lot of these things, unless it's a consistent refrain, doesn't do anything. Does not, like it, you know, everybody comes up with protocol, and largely the protocol that happens over time, anything that becomes culturally a protocol in an organization or in a culture, you know, in a group of people of any sort, is usually because of a recurring problem. For example, one of the reasons that I believe that there's been a rise in police shootings specifically over the last 25, 30 years, especially more than that, like 35 years, was directly related to the AIDS crisis. Because there became, if you'll recall, late 80s to early 90s, there was a huge conversation about bloodborne illness and interacting with people, and that criminals, you know, you could see all the videos when anything sharp in your pocket that I should know about. That conversation, that's all about needles. That's all about used needles or a knife or something that might have blood on it already. Obviously, you don't want to reach into somebody's pocket if they have an open knife, but that's what it is. TOS Snitch is saying, I think it was 9/11. It predates that. And it's also like the crack epidemic, again, some people are saying that's what it was. That was related to sort of coastal cities. This is a nationwide thing. And the fear of bloodborne illness, I mean, it's literally why zombie movies changed. We went from they just walk around to that's where 28 Days Later came from. That was the fear of bloodborne illness in the public. That's not, so it became a heightened fear. It really did. And then it culturalized certain things, and then you'll have an ebb and flow in reaction, like, okay, we overcorrected and we move back. That's how society, that's all societies build cultural things, no matter who you are, whatever group you're in. We'll always build like, okay, we keep seeing this problem over and over again. Can we solve it, and how do we solve it? And a lot of times, the first 3 or 4 solutions aren't going to work. So that is what I would like people to have sort of a little bit in their consideration box. You don't have to take my word for it, but you can also watch people's reaction who believed the right-wing narrative about the Paul Pelosi attack. Watch how they react to the reality of the video they're seeing.
They're frozen.
Yeah. Right. And the people, though, that supported it are like, well, it wasn't, obviously they're going through this, they're trying to use millisecond frozen frames of reality as a wedge of time, because you can pause a piece of video and talk about it for an hour. And so a lot of people are acting as if, and this is how people wrap their head around when they watch these kind of things. And like I said, they are doing it about police violence videos as well. It's the same psychological reaction. If I can pause it, it's paused in time. It's a very peculiar aspect of human psychology. And you have to understand that pause didn't happen then. That pause doesn't exist. There's no such thing as a freeze frame in real life. That's not how that works in a human interaction.
Right.
So, and especially when it's a reaction, which is totally different, I would argue, than someone who is presenting something, doing a show, having like Trump rallies and whatnot, where I'm breaking stuff down based on the lie they're telling at that moment because they had intention and they didn't react to that. They lied on purpose, right? And I think maybe that's the thing. Maybe when we deal with reaction videos as a cultural thing, and that's been a growing thing over the last decade and a half. Fight the illusion that there were any pauses. Whenever you see something like this, and also fight the illusion that you're seeing the entire story, because you want to see the 10, 15 minutes prior if it's available. You want to know the follow-up. The smaller the slice of reality you're seeing, the more apt you are to attribute traits that are not there. And the right wing did this it was so obvious. They did this so much with the trickle out of news that came out about the Pelosi attack. They built an artificial reality on it. Yeah, and last night I showed Glenn Beck miserable as he watched his entire lie fall apart. We got to take a break. When we come back, Philip Bittner will be with us live from Ukraine. We'll take your questions in the chat room and on the Discord as well. What's that?
Yeah.
What? And by the way, Creative Circle members in the Discord have a really cool new tool I put in there. I'm just saying. We'll be back.